In this video, let's add Google authentication method for our application. So in your authentication panel in the Firebase, go to Sign In Methods, click on Add New Provider and make sure to add Google for your application. Click on Enable over here and it will ask for a couple of details like project. It has already pre-filled it. Support email for the project. Just click on it and whatever is your email, just select that. That should be fine. Click on Save. And once it is saved, it will tell you that you need to download the latest configuration file. So the GoogleSignIn.plist file which we added over here is now obsolete because when we added this one, we did not enable Google. So let's go ahead and download this one and replace this file with the new file which we just downloaded. So right click on this one and delete it. And now add our new file into our application. So just drag and drop it in the main folder. I'll just drop it over here. Finish. Bring it down over here. I believe this is fine. And now make sure that you don't have any number after it. Okay, yeah, so this is our Google Services Info. Now we also need to add one more package. So if you go to Xcode, add package dependencies, and we have this GoogleSignIn iOS. If you don't have this one, we will need this. So make sure you have added this. So click on this add package and let it fetch all the packages for GoogleSignIn. And make sure this GoogleSignIn and GoogleSignIn Swift package is added to your Firebase login sign up, whatever the project name is. Just add these two packages in your project. Now that Google package is added, there's one more step that we need to do. So if you go to the Firebase documentation, so this is Firebase Google Docs for iOS GoogleSignIn, it will tell you that you need to add these SDKs. First of all, you need to have this Firebase SDK, and then you need to have this GoogleSignIn SDK. We have added both of these. We added this one in the first video, and we just now added this one. So if you haven't added, just go to this link, copy this, and then go to add packages and paste it. I think I had it in my recent, that's why it came over here. But if you don't see it over here, you can just paste this URL and it will come up, and then you can click on add package and you should be able to add it. Okay, now once that is done, you need to enable Google Sign-In in Firebase project. We have already done that, so we don't need to do that. Okay, the last step is we need to add our reverse client ID into URL scheme. So if you go over here in the Google Services Info, we have this reverse client ID. Just take this, copy it, go to your project, and in your, if you see over here, it is in the URL type. We need to add one more type and paste that reverse client ID over here. So in the URL type, click on add, and in the URL scheme, just paste this. And this should be good enough. Let's see if this looks exactly the same as it is in the documentation, and that looks fine. So this is all the setup you need for Google authentication to work. Now let's go ahead and code for our Google authentication. So the first thing I want to code is a helper class. So for both Google and Apple login and sign up, I'll be creating a helper class which will be reusable, so you can just copy and paste it in your project and reuse it. So let's go to services, click on new empty file and call it Google Sign-In Helper. Okay, so we'll be creating two files, one Google Sign-In Helper, and in the next video, we'll be doing Apple Sign-In. So we'll be creating Apple Sign-In Helper. And these two files will be completely reusable so that you can use it in your application. So for Google Sign-In Helper to work, there are a couple of things that you need to import. So let's import Foundation, first of all, import Google Sign-In, and import Google Sign-In Swift, not SwiftUI, I think it's Swift only. Okay, let's create our final class, Google Sign-In Helper. So we'll create a simple function over here, func sign in, And this would be an async function, and it will throw as well. So let's do throws, and it will return Google result token basically, and it will throw. Okay, so let result, and we will call our GID signin dot shared instance dot sign in. And if you see, this function is async and it does throw. That is why we have created this async throws. And also we'll have to write try and await over here. So let's write try and await. And this Google sign in method, it still requires a view controller. So we will need a view controller. So to get a view controller on which we'll be presenting our Google sign-in, we will have to create a helper class basically. So go to your utils and create a new empty file. We'll call it utils.swift. Let's create a final util class and let's make it singleton so that we can use it easily, and we'll be using it in our Google sign-in helper class, shared utils private init. Now we need a function through which we can get the top view controller in our view stack. Whatever is the top view controller, we need to fetch that. So I copy pasted this method from a Stack Overflow. I'll just paste that over here and we can use it. So it would require UI kit first of all. Perfect, and this should work. So this function is basically returning our top view controller from our view. So let's go back to our sign-in helper class. And for this view controller, I can just get access to our top view controller from our utils. So this would be a guard statement. Guard let top view controller from utils.shared.get top view controller. And if we don't get that, then we will just throw an error. So it would be like URL error, something like cannot find host. Yeah. And let's just use this top view controller over here. And instead of doing this, let's just make this a main actor so that we are sure that we are performing this operation in the main thread. Okay, now that we have this result, if you see this result, this is a GID sign-in result, which will have an access token. And once you have this access token, all you need to do is provide this access token, a token ID, to our Firebase, and Firebase Authenticator will log in using this access token and token ID. So this GID sign-in result will have an access token and token ID. So let's get access to both access token and token ID. Guard let ID token result dot authentication. That's not correct actually. Result dot user dot ID token dot token string, and that is our token ID. Else, if we don't get this, we'll just throw URL error again. URL error. This time I'll just say bad server response. And similarly, we need an access token. Sign in result dot user dot access token dot token string. Okay, now that we have this ID and access token, we need to return that from that function. So instead of returning like a tuple or something, I'll just create a simple data type of Google result tokens, and this will have let access token string let ID token string. And now I can return Google result tokens, and this would return access token. This one is the access token, and this one is the ID token. And let's make this function returnable. So it will return Google result token. Perfect. So this helper class has a very simple sign-in method, which will basically return our tokens to log in with Google. Now, once we have these tokens, in our authentication manager, we'll use these tokens and log in our user into our Firebase using these Google authentication tokens. So let's create a new function over here. It will be called sign in with Google. And this will take tokens and we'll use our Google result tokens. And yeah, it will be async throws and it will return our user info. And now if I try to log in with our credentials. So auth result, and it would be try await auth sign in. If you see, we have this auth credentials, so this is what we will use over here. And these credentials will be Google Auth provider dot credentials, and it would require ID token and access token, which we already have from this. So dot ID token, and then over here token dot access token. And now I can just return user info with our result dot user. Perfect. Now I have both of my functions ready. All we need to do is just call it from our user auth view. So first of all, go to view model, create a new empty file, call it user auth view model, and let's create a final class user auth view model, and this would be an main actor class, and it would be observable as well. Observable, not observable object, it would be observable. And make sure to import SwiftUI over here to make it work. Now I can create a function sign in with Google. This would be, yes, a sync function, and it would basically throw as well. So let's write throws. And all I have to do is call both the functions which I just created. So first of all, I need to get the tokens. So try await Google Sign-in Manager. We do not have Sign-in Manager. We have Google Sign-in Helper. And in this helper class, we have sign-in method, which returns our tokens. And once we have the tokens, all we need to do is call it from our authentication manager. So it would be try await not auth helper authentication manager dot shared dot sign in with Google with these tokens. Perfect. And now let's make this returnable and return our user info and return user info. Perfect. This is it. Now I can just call this user auth view model from our user auth view. Let's create @state private var user auth view model. And with this user auth view model, if we go to our Google button, over here is our login with Google button. When this button is clicked, we need to call our sign in with Google method. Right now, our login button is not clickable. So let's go to our login button, and over here, let's create an action. So var action, and it would be void, something like this. And let's call this action from our login action button. So I can just remove all of this and call action over here. And for this action, we'll call this action. Okay, now if I go back to our user auth view, it has this action button. And since it's the last param, I can just call it like this. And similarly for Apple also, we'll have to do this. And even for this one, because this is the same button. So we'll handle all of these later, but let's first of all handle our Google button. And in this, we'll create a task. And let's call our if let user, and we will call our try. Let's make it optional. Await, that's correct. User auth view model dot sign in with Google. That's correct. And once we have our user, what we need to do is assign it to our app state view model. So let's call our environment for app state view model dot self private var app state view model. Let's take it from here and call it over here app state view model dot current user, and it would be our user. And once it is done, once we have our user from Google Authentication, we want to dismiss this view. So to dismiss the view, again, we need an environment, and this would be for dot dismiss var dismiss. I think I made it wrong. The dot will go over here. Now it should be fine. And now I can go ahead and call this dismiss here. Okay, I think everything is done for Google Authentication to work. So let's run our application and see if our Google Authentication is working properly. Okay, so if we click on continue with Google, the app crashed. Amazing. No active configuration. Make sure GID client ID is set in info.plist. Okay, we missed one very important stuff along with reverse ID. So we said that reverse client ID in our URL type. We need to set one more. We need to set our GID client ID into our info.plist. I don't know why it's not given over here, or maybe we missed it. Did we miss it? Does it say anything? Okay, it doesn't. I don't know why. So once URL scheme is added, you will have this info.plist file over here. And in this, we have this URL type, and you will see this URL scheme, and you have this item which we added over here. Now we need to add one more item in this and call it GID client ID. And in this GID client ID, if you go to GoogleServices.info, we already have this client ID. So this is the one which we need to copy and go to our info.plist and paste it over here. Perfect. Now we have our GID client ID set. We have our reverse client ID set as well. Now it should definitely work. So let's run it. Now click on continue with Google. Now it says Firebase, your application wants to access Google. Click on continue and it will open a sheet to log in with Google. Let's go ahead with this. Okay, enter your email ID. I will enter mine. It is asking for passkey. I'll say try another way and enter your password. Click on continue and you should be able to log in with your Google account. Okay, so welcome Richard Shrestha. So we are able to log in with our Google account, and if I click on logout, it will go back to our user auth view. If I go back to my Firebase, go to users, and if you can see, I have my email ID added and the provider is Google. So Google authentication is working as expected. In the next video, let's see how we can do Apple authentication with Firebase for our SwiftUI application.